We're under investigation, Mr. Blackwood. Thaddeus Blackwood's fingers tightened around the crystal tumbler. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his Chicago penthouse, watching the city lights blur through the whiskey. SEC doesn't move this aggressively without evidence. His attorney Jasper Thornfield continued, loosening his tie. Pierce Vandermeer's team submitted documents suggesting you knowingly misrepresented third-quarter earnings. Fabricated accusations, Thaddeus said, voice cold as the ice melting in his glass. The board is nervous. Shareholders are selling. The media is circling. Thaddeus turned. At 35, his sharp features carried the weight of a man who'd seen far worse than federal investigations. Fix it, Jasper. That's what I pay you for. Jasper hesitated. There's a solution, but you won't like it. I'm listening. Your public image is killing you. The ruthless billionaire persona worked for building Blackwood Enterprises, but now it's a liability. You need to seem human. And how do you propose I accomplish that? Jasper set his briefcase on the marble counter. You need a wife. Thaddeus laughed, a harsh sound that hadn't carried actual humor in years. Absolutely not. A temporary arrangement. 1 year. Someone smart enough to handle the spotlight, but desperate enough to accept a business proposition. After Eliza, I'd rather face prison. This wouldn't be real. Just a contract, a performance. Your cold reputation is sinking the company. A marriage humanizes you, creates sympathy. When the investigation concludes, you divorce amicably. Thaddeus stared at the Manhattan skyline, buildings gleaming like the fortune he'd built from his father's ashes. Find someone thoroughly vetted. No connections to competitors, journalists, or past employees. Jasper nodded. I'll have Vivian compile candidates. As Jasper left, Thaddeus's mind drifted to the last woman he'd trusted. Eliza Stanfield had seemed perfect, intelligent, beautiful, ambitious. Until he discovered her downloading proprietary designs for Pierce Vandermeer, his former partner. The memory still burned like acid. 1,700 miles away in Boston, Maeve Calloway pressed her phone to her ear, stepping outside the architectural firm where she'd been working late on renderings. What do you mean not responding, Dr. Winters? The autumn wind whipped her copper hair across her face. The treatment was supposed to be working. I'm sorry, Ms. Calloway. The conventional therapies aren't effective for your brother's condition. There's an experimental protocol showing promise in similar cases. Then let's do that. It's not covered by insurance. The cost would be approximately. Maeve flinched at the figure. I'll find a way. Just keep him stable. She ended the call, leaning against the cold brick wall. Her 28 years had been defined by responsibility since her parents' accident left her as Quinn's guardian. Her brother was all she had left. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. Rent due tomorrow. You got your half? Maeve slid down the wall, calculating what little remained in her savings against Quinn's medical bills. Something would have to give. Ms. Vivian Graham for Ms. Calloway. Maeve looked up from her drafting table 3 days later, confusion crossing her face as the receptionist ushered in a sleek woman in a charcoal suit. How can I help you? Maeve asked, setting down her pencil. I represent Thaddeus Blackwood of Blackwood Enterprises. Vivian assessed the modest office. Your renovation design for Horizons Children's Hospital was exceptional. Thank you, but that was just pro bono work for the Blackwood Foundation. Yes, Mr. Blackwood has a proposition that might interest you. She placed a business card on Maeve's desk. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., Aurelius Restaurant. I'm not looking for a new position. This isn't employment in the traditional sense. Vivian's eyes flickered to the hospital bill partially visible under Maeve's sketchbook. $5 million for 1 year of your time. Maeve's breath caught. Doing what exactly? Mr. Blackwood will explain. Just know it's both legal and potentially life-changing. Vivian headed toward the door. Black car will collect you at 7:30. Your brother's treatment might depend on your decision. How do you know about my brother? Vivian smiled thinly. We know everything about you, Miss Calloway. That's why you're perfect. After she left, Maeve stared at the embossed card. $5 million would cover Quinn's treatment 10 times over. What could possibly be worth that much? The answer terrified and intrigued her in equal measure. Jasper set a folder on Thaddeus's desk. Maeve Calloway, 28. Architectural designer with genuine talent. Parents deceased. Brother with rare autoimmune disorder requiring expensive treatment. No troubling connections, squeaky clean background. And she designed that children's hospital wing the foundation funded. Thaddeus examined her photograph. Intelligence in those green eyes. No artifice in her expression. She's meeting you at Aurelius tomorrow night, Jasper continued. If she accepts, we proceed immediately with the marriage. The SEC won't wait. And if she refuses, then we find someone else. But someone this perfect, with this much motivation. Jasper shook his head. She won't refuse. Thaddeus closed the file. I hope you're right. For both our sakes. Aurelius Restaurant occupied the top floor of a historic Chicago building, its windows offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Maeve smoothed her borrowed dress as the maitre d' guided her to a private alcove where Thaddeus Blackwood waited. Her research had yielded countless photos of the man, but none captured the intensity that radiated from him in person. He didn't stand when she approached, a deliberate power move she noted immediately. Miss Calloway. His voice matched his appearance, controlled, precise, cold. Mr. Blackwood. She slid into the seat across from him, refusing to be intimidated. He studied her with gray eyes that missed nothing. Do you know why you're here? Your assistant mentioned money, but conveniently omitted details. A server appeared with wine Maeve suspected cost more than her monthly rent. When they were alone again, Thaddeus leaned forward. I require a wife. Maeve nearly choked on her wine. Excuse me. A temporary one. My company faces certain challenges. My public persona is considered a liability. Marriage would soften my image considerably, and I was chosen because you designed the children's hospital wing funded by my foundation. Your background check was impeccable. You have impressive composure, and you need money for your brother's experimental treatment. The directness stung. You investigated me. Thoroughly. Maeve set down her glass. What exactly are you proposing? 1 year of marriage. You'll live in my home, attend functions as my wife, present a united front to the public. After the year concludes, we divorce amicably. You receive $5 million. And the catch? Absolute discretion, a comprehensive NDA, and convincing performances when necessary. The server returned with their first course. Maeve barely noticed what she ate, her mind calculating possibilities and consequences. Why marriage? Why not hire an actress for public appearances? Marriage creates legal ties that appear genuine. The public respects marriage. It generates sympathy. He cut his food with surgical precision. The optics are stronger. And what about? She hesitated. Physical expectations. His expression darkened. This is strictly business. Separate bedrooms. No physical relationship required. Relief and something like disappointment mingled in her chest. You must be desperate. Pragmatic. The arrangement benefits us both. Your brother gets treatment. My company survives this challenge. Maeve thought of Quinn, his condition worsening by the day. The experimental treatment was his best hope, but completely out of reach without this money. When would this start? Immediately. The contract is prepared. We would marry at the Lake Forest Courthouse tomorrow. Tomorrow. Maeve set down her fork. That's insane. Time is critical. His eyes met hers. $5 million, Miss Calloway. For 1 year of pretending. Maeve closed her eyes briefly. I want to review the contract with my own attorney. Of course. My driver will take you to Jasper Thornfield's office tonight. If the terms are acceptable, we proceed tomorrow. If not, we part ways. She nodded, suddenly aware of what she was considering. Selling a year of her life to a man whose reputation for ruthlessness was legendary. But Quinn was running out of time. For hours later, Maeve sat in Jasper Thornfield's elegant office, reviewing the final revisions to the contract. The $5 million will be placed in escrow, Jasper explained. Half released upon signing, half upon completion of the 1-year term. You'll receive a monthly allowance for expenses separate from the principal amount. And the confidentiality clauses? Standard for arrangements of this nature. You can never discuss the true nature of your marriage. Maeve read the final page, then signed. I want to speak with my brother's doctor tomorrow. The treatment needs to start immediately. Mr. Blackwood has already arranged it, Jasper said, collecting the documents. Dr. Winters will be expecting your call. Maeve looked up sharply. He's already contacted my brother's doctor? Mr. Blackwood is thorough in all his dealings. Outside, Chicago's lights blurred through the car window as the driver took her to the hotel where she'd spend her last night as just Maeve Calloway. Tomorrow she would become Mrs. Blackwood, a name that would open doors and lock her into the strangest contract of her life. The Lake Forest Courthouse was quiet the next morning. Thaddeus wore a tailored charcoal suit, his expression unchanged from dinner. Maeve had selected a simple cream dress that looked bridal enough to satisfy appearances. Jasper and Vivian served as witnesses, their faces professionally neutral as the justice of the peace recited the standard ceremony. "Do you, Thaddeus Alexander Blackwood, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." 2 words, delivered without emotion. "And do you, Maeve Catherine Calloway, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Maeve hesitated just long enough for Thaddeus to glance at her, the first crack in his composure. "I do. By the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I now pronounce you husband and wife." No kiss concluded the ceremony. Thaddeus merely extended his hand, which Maeve shook as if closing a business deal, which, of course, they were. Outside, a photographer Jasper had arranged captured their exit for the press. Thaddeus placed his hand at the small of Maeve's back, leaning toward her ear. "Smile," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. "You just married the love of your life." Maeve summoned a radiant smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And you just married a complete stranger. I wonder which of us made the worst bargain." His hand tightened slightly at her waist as they descended the courthouse steps toward the waiting Bentley, their first public appearance as husband and wife. Behind them, Jasper handed the photographer an envelope. "Make sure those reach the Tribune Society pages by tomorrow." As the car pulled away, Maeve watched Lake Forest recede through the window, the weight of the simple platinum band on her finger already feeling like a shackle. "I've arranged for your things to be moved to the penthouse," Thaddeus said without looking at her. "Vivian will show you your quarters when we arrive." "My brother." "The first installment has been transferred to the account we established. Dr. Winters has been contacted. Everything is arranged." Maeve nodded, relief washing over her. Whatever came next, Quinn would get his treatment. That made it worth it. The silence stretched between them as the car wound through Chicago's streets. 2 strangers bound by paper and promises, each with everything to gain and everything to lose. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Maeve stood before the mirror in her suite, barely recognizing herself. The woman reflected back wore a midnight blue gown that cost more than her previous car, hair styled in elegant waves, jewelry selected by a personal shopper who knew exactly what a Blackwood wife should wear. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "The car leaves in 10 minutes," Thaddeus said through the door, not bothering to enter. Their interactions had been minimal, professionally distant. They shared meals occasionally, when necessary to maintain their story for the household staff. "I'll be right down." Tonight marked their first major public appearance, a charity gala at the Drake Hotel benefiting Chicago Memorial Hospital. The society pages had been buzzing about their sudden marriage, speculating wildly about how the city's most notorious bachelor had finally been tamed. Maeve descended the curved staircase of the penthouse to find Thaddeus waiting, imposing in his tuxedo. His eyes traveled over her appearance, assessing rather than admiring. "You look appropriate," he said. "High praise indeed," she replied, taking the wrap Vivian handed her. In the elevator, Thaddeus finally spoke again. "The Foundation's donation to Chicago Memorial is substantial. Everyone will be watching us. Remember." "I know. We're madly in love. I was the architect who finally broke through your walls." The whirlwind romance was too perfect to wait. She recited the cover story they'd crafted. "I've memorized it all, including your favorite color and food allergies." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Don't improvise too much." "Worried I'll say something compromising?" "Worried you'll say something inconsistent." The car ride passed in silence. When they arrived, camera flashes greeted them. Thaddeus transformed, placing his hand on the small of her back, leaning close as if sharing an intimate comment. The subtle shift in his demeanor was remarkable. His features softened, eyes warming when they looked at her. "You're quite the actor," she murmured as they entered the grand ballroom. "Necessary skill in business," he replied, his smile never faltering as they moved through the crowd. The evening became a masterclass in social navigation. Maeve watched Thaddeus work the room, noting how people responded to him, with respect, fear, occasionally genuine affection. She played her part, charming his associates, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. "So how did you two meet?" asked Elaine Harrington, a board member's wife whose curiosity barely masked her skepticism. Before Thaddeus could answer, Maeve laughed naturally. "He claims it was at the Children's Hospital opening, but I know he never noticed me then. The real first meeting was when I spilled coffee on his briefcase 6 months ago. He was furious until I offered to buy him lunch to apologize. Thaddeus looked at her with surprise quickly masked by affection. She's never admitted that was deliberate until now. The surrounding group laughed appreciatively. Elaine's eyes narrowed, not entirely convinced. "Show me that fountain," Thaddeus said suddenly, guiding Maeve away with his hand at her waist. When they were alone, his smile vanished. What was that? People don't believe perfect stories. They believe flawed, human ones. Maeve adjusted his bow tie slightly, aware they were still being watched. "The spilled coffee makes me seem clumsy but determined. Makes you seem capable of forgiveness. Humanizes us both." His expression shifted from anger to something like reluctant appreciation. "Clever. I've observed people my whole life, Thaddeus. It's what makes me a good architect. Understanding how humans move through spaces." For the first time, he truly looked at her, not as an employee or inconvenience, but as someone worth considering. Their moment was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Thaddeus, aren't you going to introduce your bride?" Maeve felt him tense beside her. The man approaching was handsome in a polished way, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Pierce Vandermeer," Thaddeus said, voice cooling. "My former partner. Pierce, my wife, Maeve." Pierce took her hand, holding it slightly too long. "Enchanting. I never thought our Thaddeus would marry, much less someone so unexpected." "The best surprises often come when least anticipated," she replied, disliking him instantly. "Indeed. Though I wonder what surprised Chicago more, your marriage or the timing of it." Just as those unfortunate SEC questions arose, Pierce directed this at Thaddeus, whose expression hardened. "The SEC investigation is concluding. The allegations were baseless." "Of course." Pierce's smile widened. "I should circulate. Lovely meeting you, Mrs. Blackwood. I'm sure we'll see much more of each other." As he walked away, Maeve felt Thaddeus's hand tighten on hers. "I don't like him," she said quietly. "Good instinct." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and performative touches. By midnight, Maeve's face hurt from smiling, but she'd succeeded in charming most of Chicago's elite. "Your wife is delightful, Thaddeus," said Walter Kimball, chairman of the hospital board. "So different from the women you usually favor." "I grew up," Thaddeus replied, his arm around Maeve's waist seemingly natural now. In the car returning home, they sat in silence until Thaddeus spoke. "You did well tonight." From him, it was high praise. The audience was receptive. Most of them, anyway. Pierce was probing for weakness. "I gathered that. You never mentioned he'd be there." "I didn't know." Thaddeus looked out the window. "He's been circling since the investigation began. Like a vulture." At the penthouse, they rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened, Thaddeus stepped out first. "I have work to finish. Good night, Maeve." She watched him disappear into his study, wondering about the history between him and Pierce. Rather than heading to her suite, she found herself drawn to the east wing where Thaddeus kept his office. The door was ajar, but he wasn't inside. Curiosity pulled her in. His desk was meticulously organized, but a file lay open, photographs of twisted metal, a car accident. The name on the police report caught her eye. Blackwood, Richard, and Elizabeth. Thaddeus's parents. A newspaper clipping showed a younger Thaddeus at a funeral, face impassive even then. The headline read, "Blackwood heir takes control after parents' tragic accident." "What are you doing?" She turned to find Thaddeus in the doorway, expression thunderous. "I'm sorry, I was looking for you to ask about tomorrow's schedule." "In my private files?" He crossed the room, closing the folder sharply. The door was open. "I saw the accident report. That's not your concern." His voice was dangerously low. "My private space is off limits. That was clear in our arrangement." Maeve straightened. "I apologize for the intrusion. It won't happen again." As she moved to leave, he blocked her path. "What did you see?" "Just the accident report." "Your parents?" She hesitated. "I lost mine too. Different circumstances, but I understand." "You understand nothing." He stepped aside. "Good night, Mrs. Blackwood." The formality stung more than anger would have. Maeve returned to her suite, replaying the evening in her mind. How seamlessly they presented themselves as a loving couple. How quickly that facade had shattered in private. Her phone chimed with a text from Quinn. "Started new treatment today. Doctor's optimistic." "Thank you, sis." Maeve touched the screen, remembering why she was here. One moment of tension in Thaddeus's study was nothing compared to what she'd endured for her brother. She would simply be more careful about maintaining boundaries. But as she prepared for bed, the image of that accident report lingered in her mind, along with the sudden vulnerability she'd glimpsed in Thaddeus's expression, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. 2 months into their marriage, Thaddeus informed Maeve they would be spending the weekend at his Lake Geneva estate. The Blackwood Enterprises board retreat had been scheduled months before their arrangement began. Packed for 3 days, he said over breakfast, not looking up from his tablet. Wisconsin weather is unpredictable this time of year. Maeve nodded, stirring her coffee. Their routine had settled into something almost comfortable, formal but functional. She attended events at his side, charmed investors, and fulfilled her role with increasing skill. In private, they maintained a careful distance, their conversations rarely straying from schedules and appearances. The drive to Wisconsin took less than 2 hours, the sleek Bentley winding around Lake Michigan's shore before turning inland. The sprawling estate appeared through a break in the trees, a modern interpretation of a lakeside lodge with sweeping glass walls facing the water. "This is beautiful," Maeve said, breaking the silence. Thaddeus glanced at the property as if seeing it anew. "My mother designed it. Before she married my father, she studied architecture." It was the most personal information he'd volunteered since their wedding. The housekeeper greeted them with news of an approaching storm, severe enough that the board members had postponed their arrival until the following day. Soon after dinner, Maeve stood at the wall of windows watching lightning split the sky, rain lashing against the glass. "Power often goes out during these storms," Thaddeus said, entering the room with 2 glasses of bourbon. He offered one to her. "Backup generator covers essentials only." Maeve accepted the drink, noting this unexpected civility. "Have you owned this place long?" "It was my parents'. I rarely come here." He stood beside her, watching the storm. Too many memories. As if on cue, the house plunged into darkness, emergency lights casting a soft glow. "Perfect," Thaddeus muttered, pulling out his phone for additional light. "I'll check the generator." "I'll get candles," Maeve offered, having noticed them in a cabinet earlier. They moved through their tasks with surprising coordination. When Thaddeus returned from the utility room, Maeve had transformed the great room with scattered candlelight, creating an unexpected intimacy. "Generator's running, but several trees are down. We're cut off until morning at least." He poured more bourbon, the amber liquid catching the candlelight. "No cellular service either." "Sounds like the start of a horror movie," Maeve said, attempting levity. "Or a bad romantic comedy." His unexpected humor surprised her. They settled on opposite ends of the sofa, the storm raging outside. The bourbon warmed Maeve's chest, loosening the perpetual tension between her shoulder blades. "Why architecture?" Thaddeus asked suddenly. Maeve looked up, startled by his interest. "I've always been fascinated by how spaces affect people, how the right design can change a person's experience, their mood, even their health." She traced the rim of her glass. "That children's hospital wing. I designed it to make the kids feel less afraid, more in control. It worked. The patient recovery rates improved 16% the first year." She smiled, genuinely pleased. "You tracked that?" "The foundation monitors all its investments." He hesitated. "But yes, I noted that project specifically." Another crash of thunder rattled the windows. Maeve pulled her knees up, curling into the corner of the sofa. "Your brother," Thaddeus began, then paused. "Is his treatment progressing?" "Yes. The doctors are cautiously optimistic." She studied him in the flickering light. "Thank you for asking." Silence stretched between them, somehow less strained than usual. "I saw my parents die," Thaddeus said abruptly, staring into his glass. "We were driving back from a charity event. I was 17. The brake lines had been cut." Maeve froze, understanding the significance of this confession. The investigation found evidence of tampering, but could never prove who was responsible. His voice remained steady, detached, as if reciting facts about strangers. "My father had enemies. Creating something valuable always creates enemies." "I'm sorry," Maeve said quietly. "It was a long time ago. Some wounds don't heal with time." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "Experience?" Maeve nodded. "I was studying at Rhode Island School of Design when my parents' sailboat capsized in a storm. I couldn't get home for 3 days because of canceled flights. By the time I arrived, decisions had already been made. Funeral arrangements, Quinn's care. She swallowed hard. I've always wondered if I could have changed something if I'd been there sooner. You couldn't have, Thaddeus said with unexpected gentleness. Death doesn't negotiate. Another silence fell, companionable rather than awkward. Outside, the storm showed no signs of abating. After my parents died, I threw myself into the company, Thaddeus continued. It was easier than dealing with the loss. Eliza came along 2 years later, brilliant, beautiful, ambitious. I thought I'd found someone who understood me. Maeve waited, sensing there was more to the story. She was working with Pierce the entire time. Industrial espionage dressed up as romance. His laugh held no humor. I discovered her downloading proprietary designs from my private server. Designs that later appeared in Pierce's product line. That's why you hate him. Among other reasons. Thaddeus set down his glass. Pierce worked for my father. After the accident, he expected to take control until I came of age. When I pushed him out instead, he never forgave me. You think he was involved in your parents' death? Maeve asked carefully. I could never prove it. But Pierce has always appeared to benefit from my losses. Lightning illuminated his face. The hard planes softened momentarily by vulnerability. Maeve fought the urge to reach for his hand. Is that why you were so specific about our arrangement? No real relationship, just appearances? Thaddeus met her gaze. Would you trust again after that? I don't know, she answered honestly. The candles flickered as wind rattled the windows. Thaddeus stood, moving to add another log to the fireplace. Your brother, he said, changing the subject. Tell me about him. Surprised by his interest, Maeve described Quinn, his talent for music, his stubborn optimism despite years of illness, his determination to finish college despite frequent hospitalizations. He sounds resilient, Thaddeus observed. Like his sister. Necessity, Maeve replied. When you're responsible for someone else, you can't afford to break. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Suddenly, the temperature in the room seemed to drop as a draft swept through. You're cold, he noted, retrieving a blanket from a nearby chest. Instead of handing it to her, he unfolded it and draped it across her shoulders, his fingers brushing against her collarbone. Maeve looked up, startled by the casual intimacy of the gesture. Their eyes met, and for a moment, something shifted between them, recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits shaped by similar losses. Thaddeus stepped back first, clearing his throat. We should get some rest. The board will arrive tomorrow once the road's clear. Of course. Maeve pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Good night, Thaddeus. He paused at the doorway, silhouetted against the hall's emergency lights. Maeve. Her name sounded different in his voice now. Thank you for listening. After he left, Maeve remained by the fire, replaying their conversation. For the first time since their arrangement began, she'd glimpsed the man behind the billionaire mask, wounded but not broken, hardened but not hollow. The storm continued through the night, but inside, something had changed. A different kind of storm was brewing, one neither of them had anticipated in their carefully crafted arrangement. The board meeting at Lake Geneva concluded without incident, but something fundamental had shifted between Thaddeus and Maeve. Their performance as a devoted couple seemed less performative, their casual touches lingering a moment longer than necessary. Neither acknowledged the change, yet both felt it. 3 weeks later, Maeve sat in Thaddeus's home office reviewing architectural journals while he attended conference calls. These quiet evenings had become their routine, separate activities shared in comfortable silence. Tonight, however, Thaddeus seemed distracted, his responses to his CFO curt even by his standards. When he finally ended the call, he rubbed his temples. The SEC investigation is intensifying. They've requested additional documentation from 5 years ago. Maeve set down her magazine. Is that unusual? It suggests they've found something specific they're pursuing. He tapped his desk rhythmically. The timing is suspicious. Pierce, possibly. The original complaint was anonymous, but the focus areas align perfectly with projects he'd have knowledge of. Maeve hesitated. Since their conversation during the storm, Thaddeus had been more forthcoming, but still guarded about business matters. Could I help somehow? Fresh eyes might notice something others have missed. He studied her for a long moment. You're not involved in this aspect of our arrangement. I have a vested interest in your company's stability, she countered. My brother's treatment depends on it. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Your brother's treatment is secure regardless of what happens with the investigation. I've ensured that. The revelation surprised her. Still, I'd like to help if I can. After another long pause, Thaddeus opened his laptop. These are the financial statements in question. The SEC claims these quarterly reports contain deliberately inflated projections. Maeve moved to stand behind him, studying the documents over his shoulder. Her proximity seemed to distract him momentarily. What strikes you as unusual? She asked. Nothing. That's the problem. These projections were conservative by our standards. Maeve continued examining the reports, her analytical mind treating the numbers like a design problem. May I see the supporting documents? The ones backing up these projections. Thaddeus accessed another folder, bringing up dozens of market analyses and sales projections. Maeve spent the next hour reviewing them methodically, occasionally asking questions that revealed her unexpected financial acumen. You understand corporate finance, Thaddeus observed. Running my own architecture firm meant learning business basics. She tapped the screen. These market growth projections for the European division, they don't match the footnoted source data. Thaddeus leaned closer, their shoulders touching. What do you mean? The projection cites Peterson Market Research as the source, but the growth rate used is higher than what their report actually showed. She pulled up the original report. See? Someone modified the data when incorporating it. Thaddeus's expression darkened. These projections came directly from Pierce's former division. Over the next several days, Maeve helped Thaddeus and Jasper comb through years of financial documentation. They converted the dining room into a war room, walls covered with timelines and financial charts. Maeve's architectural training gave her a unique perspective on organizing complex information visually. There's a pattern, she said one evening, connecting threads between seemingly unrelated discrepancies. All these modified projections occurred when Pierce was transitioning out of the company. The changes are subtle, never more than 8% inflation, but consistently positive in areas where his performance bonuses would be calculated. Jasper whistled low. He was padding his final compensation package and creating a paper trail that could later be used against the company. Thaddeus added, his voice tight, with controlled anger. The modified projections came from his department, but the final reports bear my signature. Maeve noticed his hands clenching. Without thinking, she placed her hand over his. We have proof it was systematic. That matters. Their eyes met, the momentary connection charged with something neither was prepared to address. Thaddeus withdrew his hand first. I'll prepare a response to the SEC, Jasper said, glancing between them knowingly. When Jasper left to make calls, Maeve continued organizing documents. There's something else bothering me about these reports. What? The metadata. Several key files show editing sessions from unusual hours, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., all from the same user account. Which account? Someone named E. Stanfield. Thaddeus went very still. Eliza, your ex? Maeve looked up sharply. She worked for the company? Briefly, in strategic planning. His voice had gone cold. She had access to these systems before I discovered her connection to Pierce. The pieces clicked together in Maeve's mind. They were working together from the beginning, setting up a situation they could exploit later. Thaddeus paced the room, energy radiating from him like heat. Pierce needed someone with access to my private files. Eliza provided that. Together, they created a ticking time bomb in the company's financial records. And now, with the SEC investigation, the bomb detonates, Maeve concluded, damaging your reputation and the company's stability. She continued scanning files, determined to find more evidence. Hours later, exhaustion setting in, she discovered an email thread buried in archived correspondence, communications between Pierce and an external email address that, when cross-referenced, belonged to Eliza. Thaddeus, look at this. She pulled up the emails. They were still communicating after she supposedly left the company. And there's a reference to the plan being in motion dated just 2 weeks before the SEC complaint was filed. Thaddeus read the emails, his expression hardening with each word. This connects them directly to the complaint. We should bring this to the SEC immediately, Maeve said, already organizing the evidence. No. She looked up, surprised. Why not? This proves you were set up. It proves they communicated. We need more. His tone had changed, becoming distant. I'll handle this from here. but we were making progress together. This isn't your concern, Maeve. The warmth that had been growing between them vanished instantly. You fulfilled your obligation by attending events and presenting a united front. The company's internal matters remain my responsibility. Maeve felt as if she'd been slapped. After everything we just uncovered. You're my wife on paper only, he interrupted. Not my business partner, not my confidant. I appreciate your assistance, but you've overstepped. The coldness in his voice stunned her. After weeks of gradual thawing, this sudden freeze was jarring. I see. She gathered her notes methodically. I was under the impression we were building something resembling trust. My mistake. Trust is a luxury I can't afford. His eyes were shuttered. The vulnerability she'd glimpsed in Wisconsin nowhere to be found. We have an arrangement, nothing more. Maeve stood, maintaining her composure with effort. Then I'll return to my designated role. The silent, decorative wife who smiles at parties and asks no questions. She walked to the door, then turned back. You're so afraid of being betrayed again that you push away anyone who tries to help. Pierce doesn't need to destroy you. Thaddeus. You're doing that yourself. After she left, Thaddeus stared at the evidence they'd accumulated together. Her insights had advanced the investigation more in days than his team had in months. Yet the moment she'd gotten too close, the moment he'd felt himself depending on her, instinct had taken over. The same instinct that had kept him isolated and untouchable for years. The same instinct that, for the first time, felt like a liability rather than protection. Maeve sat beside Quinn's hospital bed in Boston, watching autumn rain streak the windows. 3 weeks had passed since her confrontation with Thaddeus. 3 weeks of strained politeness and separate lives despite sharing the same penthouse. You look terrible, Quinn observed, his voice weak but his eyes sharp as ever. The experimental treatment had taken its toll, leaving him gaunt but fighting. Thanks. Just what every woman wants to hear. Maeve forced a smile. Trouble in billionaire paradise. She sighed, adjusting his blanket unnecessarily. It's complicated. He's a jerk, isn't he? I knew it. Quinn attempted to sit up, triggering a coughing fit that alarmed Maeve. Easy. She helped him sip water. He's not a jerk. He's damaged. In ways I'm starting to understand too well. Quinn studied her face. You actually care about him. The observation hit too close to the truth. I care about our arrangement. His company's stability affects your treatment. Liar. Quinn smiled weakly. The old Maeve would have had spreadsheets tracking every penny. You haven't asked about finances once. Before she could respond, Dr. Winters entered with a tablet in hand. His expression made Maeve's heart sink. The latest results aren't what we hoped, he said gently. The treatment isn't producing the expected response. What does that mean? Maeve asked, gripping Quinn's hand. We need to consider alternative approaches. There's a new protocol being developed at Johns Hopkins, but it's still experimental and not covered by any insurance. Quinn closed his eyes briefly. How much? The treatment itself, plus associated care, would approach $2 million. The figure hung in the air. Maeve's mind raced. She'd received half of Thaddeus's payment, but much had already gone to Quinn's current treatment and paying off their parents' remaining debts. We'll figure it out, she assured Quinn, though she had no idea how. Later, in her hotel room, Maeve pulled out her sketchbook. She'd been working on architectural designs in her spare time. Concepts for a sustainable community center that had been her dream project before Quinn's condition worsened. Now they might be her financial salvation. She called her former business partner, Marcus. Maeve, how's married life treating you? His cheerful voice made her wince. I need to sell my portfolio, Marcus. All the designs, including the community center concept. What? Those are your signature works. Your future. Quinn needs another treatment. More expensive than the last. There was a pause. I can reach out to some firms, but you know the market's tight. Even for work of your caliber, we're talking 6 figures at best, not 7. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Do what you can, she said, ending the call. Maeve leaned against the hotel window, watching Boston's skyline blur through her tears. She needed to return to Chicago tomorrow, resume her role as Mrs. Blackwood. The thought felt hollow now. Her phone rang. Jasper Thornfield. Mrs. Blackwood, I've been trying to reach you. There's been a development with the company situation. I'm in Boston with my brother. He's not doing well. I'm sorry to hear that. Jasper sounded genuinely concerned. Thaddeus asked me to inform you that the investigation is intensifying. Your presence at the charity ball this weekend would be helpful. Of course. Her purpose reduced to appearance once again. I'll be there, she said flatly. He's been working non-stop since you left, Jasper added, his tone carefully neutral. The evidence you uncovered gave us a starting point, but the SEC requires more definitive proof. That's no longer my concern. Mr. Blackwood made that quite clear. After the call, Maeve packed mechanically. She'd return to Chicago, fulfill her obligations, then figure out how to save Quinn without depending on a man who couldn't trust her. Thaddeus stood at his office window, Chicago spread before him like a kingdom he no longer desired. 3 weeks without Maeve's insights had stalled the investigation. Worse, the penthouse felt cavernous in her absence, her temporary trip to Boston highlighting how accustomed he'd grown to her presence. Jasper entered without knocking. I spoke with Maeve. She'll be back for the charity event. Her brother? Not improving, from what I gathered. Thaddeus frowned. The treatment was supposed to be effective. These things aren't guaranteed. Jasper set down a folder. The SEC has scheduled the formal hearing. For weeks from now. Have we identified the source of the falsified projections? Working on it, but without Maeve's visual mapping system. Jasper shrugged. She had a way of seeing connections we missed. Thaddeus stared at the wall where her timeline had hung before he'd ordered it removed. She crossed a line. Did she? Or did she get close enough that it scared you? Jasper had known Thaddeus since law school, one of the few people who could speak bluntly to him. She was helping Thaddeus, and you pushed her away the moment she started making progress. She's not equipped to handle these matters. She's more equipped than half your executive team. Jasper moved toward the door. Quinn Calloway's medical records were sent over. The treatment isn't working. Thaddeus looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means they need a different approach. More expensive. Might be worth considering before you lose the best ally you've had in years. After Jasper left, Thaddeus accessed Quinn's medical records. The prognosis made his chest tighten unexpectedly. Without the new treatment protocol, Quinn's chances diminished significantly. For the first time in weeks, Thaddeus allowed himself to remember the night in Wisconsin. How Maeve had spoken about her brother with such devotion. How she'd listened to his own painful history without judgment. How something long dormant had stirred when she draped that blanket around her shoulders, firelight in her hair. He picked up his phone, then set it down again. Pride and fear wrestled within him. The same demons that had kept him isolated for years. The same instincts that now felt increasingly like chains rather than armor. The charity ball was in full swing when Maeve arrived, her emerald gown drawing appreciative glances. She spotted Thaddeus immediately, commanding the room, as always. Their eyes met across the crowd, his expression unreadable. As agreed, she made her way to his side, accepting his mechanical kiss on her cheek. You look lovely, he said, the words rehearsed. Thank you. She smiled for the benefit of watching eyes. The SEC hearing is scheduled? 4 weeks. He guided her through the crowd, his hand at her waist feeling foreign now. Your brother's treatment isn't progressing as expected. Maeve stiffened. You've been monitoring his medical records? Of course. The arrangement includes his care. The arrangement. She nearly spat the word. Is that all anyone is to you? An arrangement? A transaction? Thaddeus led her onto a deserted balcony, away from curious ears. Maeve, don't. She stepped back from his touch. I've done everything asked of me. Played the devoted wife. Smiled for cameras. Even helped uncover evidence against Pierce. But I can't do this anymore. What are you saying? I'm returning to Boston tomorrow. Permanently. Quinn needs me, and he needs a treatment I can't afford even with what you've paid me. She removed her wedding ring, offering it to him. Consider our contract void. Thaddeus stared at the ring as if it were a weapon. Your brother's treatment is non-negotiable. I'll ensure it continues. I don't want your money. Not anymore. She placed the ring on the balcony ledge. I thought I glimpsed someone real behind your walls. Someone worth knowing. I was wrong. She turned to leave, dignity intact despite the tears threatening to fall. Maeve. His voice stopped her. For a moment, something raw and genuine broke through his facade. But then Pierce Vandermeer appeared at the balcony entrance, and Thaddeus's expression shuddered once more. Trouble in paradise? Pierce asked, smirking. Such a shame when marriages of convenience hit rough patches. Maeve looked between the two men, understanding dawning. He knows. Pierce has always been perceptive, Thaddeus said coolly. And opportunistic. Just a businessman recognizing a business arrangement. Pierce stepped closer. Though I must say, Thaddeus, she seems genuinely upset. Perhaps the arrangement became something more? At least for one of you. The insinuation hung in the air. Before either could respond, Vivian appeared, her expression urgent. Mr. Blackwood, Boston General Hospital is calling regarding Quinn Calloway. They say it's urgent. Maeve's world tilted. She grabbed the balcony railing for support. Put it through to my phone, Thaddeus ordered. Pierce watched the scene with calculated interest. How touching. The devoted brother-in-law. Maeve barely registered his words as she took the phone from Vivian, heart pounding. This is Maeve Calloway, she said, voice remarkably steady. As she listened, her knees buckled. Thaddeus caught her elbow, supporting her weight. I understand. I'll be there as soon as possible. She ended the call, face ashen. Quinn's taken a turn. They're moving him to intensive care. Without hesitation, Thaddeus turned to Vivian. Have the jet prepared. We leave for Boston immediately. We? Maeve looked up, surprised through her fear. Yes, we. His eyes met hers, the mask momentarily dropping. Some arrangements transcend contracts, Maeve. As they left the balcony, Pierce called after them. Running away won't save your company, Thaddeus, or your marriage of convenience. Thaddeus paused, turning back. You've always underestimated what I'm willing to fight for, Pierce. That was your first mistake. In the car racing toward the airport, Maeve stared at her hands, mind focused solely on Quinn. She barely noticed when Thaddeus's fingers tentatively covered hers. He'll be all right, he said quietly. Whatever he needs, it's his. For the first time since their argument, Maeve didn't pull away. In the face of possibly losing her brother, even a tenuous connection felt like an anchor in a storm. The antiseptic smell of Massachusetts General Hospital surrounded Maeve as she sat vigil by Quinn's bedside. 3 days had passed since they'd rushed to Boston. Quinn had stabilized but remained critically ill, his body rejecting the treatment that was supposed to save him. Thaddeus had been a constant, surprising presence, handling medical staff, ensuring Quinn received priority care, even arranging for specialists from Johns Hopkins to consult. He'd barely left the hospital, working remotely from a makeshift office in the waiting area. You should get some rest, he said, entering Quinn's room with coffee for Maeve. I'll stay with him. She accepted the cup gratefully. Why are you doing this? Does it matter? To me, yes. He studied Quinn's monitors before answering. Because I understand what it means to watch someone you love slip away while feeling powerless to stop it. The simple honesty of his response caught her off guard. Before she could reply, her phone buzzed. Marcus, calling about her designs. I need to take this, she said, stepping into the hallway. The news wasn't good. The market for speculative architectural projects had bottomed out. Even her award-winning community center concept wouldn't fetch enough to cover a fraction of Quinn's new treatment. When she returned, Thaddeus was speaking quietly with Dr. Winters. They stopped abruptly at her approach. What is it? She asked, dread pooling in her stomach. I've arranged for Quinn to be transferred to a private research facility specializing in autoimmune disorders, Thaddeus said. They've agreed to include him in their latest treatment protocol. What facility? How did you? The details are handled. His tone left no room for discussion. The transfer happens tomorrow. You should pack whatever you need for an extended stay. Maeve felt a rush of conflicting emotions, gratitude, suspicion, hope. Thaddeus, I can't accept. This isn't charity, Maeve. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. It's what Quinn deserves. Later that evening, while Quinn slept, Thaddeus received a call from Jasper. Maeve watched his expression darken as he stepped outside to continue the conversation. When he returned, tension radiated from him. What's happened? She asked. The SEC has accelerated the hearing. It's been moved up to next week. He checked his watch. I need to return to Chicago tonight. Of course. Maeve nodded, surprised by her disappointment. Quinn and I will be fine. You misunderstand. Quinn's transfer proceeds as planned, but I need to deal with Pierce. His eyes met hers. Your notes, the connections you mapped between the falsified projections, they gave us the breakthrough we needed. You continued the investigation using my approach. It was effective. The admission clearly cost him. Jasper found direct evidence linking Pierce and Eliza to the document tampering. And something else. Something I've suspected for years. Maeve waited, sensing the magnitude of what would come next. They found communications suggesting Pierce's involvement in my parents' accident. His voice remained steady, but Maeve saw the storm behind his eyes. Not direct evidence, but enough to warrant reopening the investigation. "Oh, Thaddeus." She reached for his hand instinctively. To her surprise, he didn't pull away. "I need to confront him. End this once and for all. I'll come with you." He shook his head. "Your place is with Quinn. Quinn will be surrounded by medical professionals. You're facing this alone." She squeezed his hand. No one should face their demons alone. The confrontation occurred 3 days later in the Blackwood Enterprises boardroom. Pierce arrived expecting a settlement negotiation, finding instead the full board, SEC representatives, and Maeve seated beside Thaddeus. "What's this about?" Pierce asked, confidence wavering at the unexpected audience. "Transparency," Thaddeus replied, voice cold as steel. "Something you've never valued." Jasper distributed folders containing the evidence they'd compiled, the falsified projections, the timeline of document tampering, emails between Pierce and Eliza plotting against Thaddeus. "These allegations are absurd," Pierce blustered, flipping through the pages. "Manufactured, just like your marriage." Thaddeus remained unfazed. "We have the original documents, Pierce, with metadata showing exactly when and by whom they were altered. Your digital fingerprints are everywhere. You've built a company on your father's legacy," Pierce sneered. "A legacy you never deserved. Is that why you tried to destroy me? Or was it because my father discovered you were embezzling before he died?" Pierce's expression shifted, reptilian calculation replacing bravado. "Richard Blackwood was going to ruin me. He deserved what happened to him." The room went deadly silent. Thaddeus leaned forward. "What exactly are you saying, Pierce?" Something savage flashed in Pierce's eyes. "I'm saying your father's brakes didn't fail by accident, but you'll never prove it." Vivian stepped forward, placing a small device on the table. "We don't need to. You just confessed to the board, the SEC, and the police officer waiting outside." The color drained from Pierce's face as he realized the recording device had been active throughout their exchange. "You manipulated financial records," Thaddeus said, standing slowly. "You conspired with Eliza to steal proprietary designs. But arranging my parents' deaths? That's beyond even what I believed you capable of." Security entered as Pierce lunged across the table toward Thaddeus. Maeve gasped as they restrained him, his composure shattered. "You think this changes anything?" Pierce shouted as they led him away. "You're still the same damaged, unlovable bastard you've always been." After the chaos subsided, the SEC representatives confirmed the investigation against Blackwood Enterprises would be dropped. Board members offered congratulations, but Thaddeus barely acknowledged them, his focus internal. Maeve stood beside him as the room emptied. "You did it. It's over." "Not quite." He checked his phone, tension returning to his features. "The hospital called. Quinn's condition has deteriorated rapidly. They're airlifting him to the research facility now." The victory turned hollow as Maeve's world contracted to a single point of fear. "I need to go to him. My jet is standing by." Thaddeus guided her toward the door, his hand steady at her back. "We'll be there in 3 hours." As they rushed from the building, reporters shouted questions about Pierce's arrest and the dropped SEC investigation. Neither answered. Their shared concern focused solely on the life hanging in the balance hundreds of miles away. Snow blanketed Boston as Thaddeus's private jet landed. The storm had intensified during their flight, delaying commercial air traffic, but Thaddeus's pilot had navigated through the weather system with military precision. They raced from the tarmac to the waiting car, the city streets nearly deserted in the blizzard. "The research facility is 20 minutes north," Thaddeus said, checking updates on his phone. "Quinn arrived an hour ago. They've started the new protocol already." Maeve stared out at the swirling white, her reflection pale in the window. "Will we make it in this storm?" "We'll make it." He squeezed her hand, the gesture no longer awkward between them. This driver navigated Kabul during sandstorms. A New England blizzard won't stop him. True to his word, they arrived at the Blackwood Institute for Immunological Research, a sleek modern building nestled among snow-covered pines. The name stopped Maeve at the entrance. "Blackwood Institute? You own this place." Thaddeus guided her inside, snow melting from their coats. "It was established last month." "Last month?" Maeve turned to him, pieces clicking into place. "While you were investigating Pierce." A nurse intercepted them before Thaddeus could respond. directing them to an elevator that required keycard access. They ascended to a floor with only 6 patient rooms, each with state-of-the-art equipment and private medical staff. Dr. Elise Chun greeted them outside Quinn's room. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Blackwood, we've stabilized Quinn and initiated the experimental protocol. The next 12 hours are critical, but early indicators are promising." Maeve barely registered being addressed as Mrs. Blackwood for the first time without irony. "Can I see him?" "Of course. He's sedated but responding well. One visitor at a time, please." Thaddeus stepped back. "Go. I'll handle things out here." Quinn looked smaller against the white hospital sheets, but his color seemed better than it had been at Massachusetts General. Sophisticated monitoring equipment surrounded him, tracking vitals Maeve didn't recognize. "I'm here, Quinn," she whispered, taking his hand. "You're getting the best care now. Just keep fighting." After 30 minutes, she returned to the waiting area to find Thaddeus in deep conversation with Dr. Chun and 2 other physicians. They fell silent at her approach. "How is he?" Thaddeus asked. "Sleeping, but he seems better somehow." She studied Thaddeus's face. "What aren't you telling me about this place?" The doctors exchanged glances before Dr. Chun spoke. "I'll check on our patient. You two should talk." When they were alone, Thaddeus led Maeve to a private consultation room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-covered landscape. "The Blackwood Institute was established 6 weeks ago," he began. "After our work on the SEC investigation uncovered Pierce's involvement, I needed something constructive to channel my energy. You built a research hospital in 6 weeks? I repurposed an existing facility, funded a specialized team, and focused their research on conditions like Quinn's." He met her eyes directly. "It gave me purpose while I was trying to find my way back to you." The admission hung in the air between them. "Back to me. I've spent my life protecting myself from betrayal, from loss. When you started getting close, seeing past my defenses, I reacted the only way I knew how." He moved to the window, snow creating a private world outside. "I pushed you away. It was a mistake. The worst I've made since letting Pierce remain in the company after my father died." Maeve joined him at the window, their reflections overlapping on the glass. "Why do all this for Quinn?" "For me. Because when I thought about what mattered, what truly mattered beyond the company, beyond my vendetta against Pierce, it was you." He turned to face her. "You challenged me, saw through me, refused to accept the walls I'd built. But our marriage was just a business arrangement. It began that way." His voice softened. "Somewhere between that courthouse ceremony and the storm in Wisconsin, something changed. I felt it. I know you did too." Maeve's heart raced. "I felt it. That's why it hurt so much when you shut me out after we found evidence against Pierce. I was afraid." The admission clearly cost him. Not of Pierce or the SEC, but of how much I'd begun to need you. "The last time I needed someone, she betrayed you," Maeve finished. "But I'm not Eliza." "No, you're not." He took her hands in his. "You're the woman who said, 'I do' to a stranger to save her brother. Who saw connections in financial data that my entire team missed. Who stood beside me while I confronted my past." "Thaddeus, let me finish. When you said 'I do' in that courthouse, it was a business transaction. But something in me, something I thought had died with my parents, responded to those words. To you." His fingers tightened around hers. "For the first time in 15 years, I found myself wanting those words to be real." Tears blurred Maeve's vision. "Is that why you created this place?" "To save Quinn." "To save Quinn, yes. But also to prove to you that I could be more than the cold, calculating man you married on paper. That I could care about something beyond myself and my company." He brushed a tear from her cheek. "That I could be worthy of a real 'I do' someday." Before she could respond, Dr. Chin knocked and entered. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Quinn is awake and asking for both of you." They found Quinn propped up slightly, looking exhausted but alert. His eyes moved between them, noting their clasped hands. "About time," he said weakly. "Thought you two would never figure it out." Maeve laughed through her tears. "Be quiet and focus on getting better. Hard not to in this place." Quinn's gaze shifted to Thaddeus. "Dr. Chun tells me you built this whole facility. Bit excessive for your brother-in-law, don't you think?" "Quinn," Maeve warned. "It's all right," Thaddeus said, surprising her with a genuine smile. "Your sister is worth excessive gestures." Quinn studied him for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." Neither was she. Thaddeus's hand found Maeve's again. "Rest now. The treatment is working, but recovery will take time. Outside Quinn's room, Maeve pulled Thaddeus into an empty consultation area. He's right, you know. This is excessive. Wonderful, but excessive. I have one more confession. Thaddeus looked almost nervous. The research here isn't just for Quinn. The protocols being developed could help thousands with similar conditions. You established a research foundation that will help thousands, just to prove something to me? Maeve shook her head in disbelief. I told you it was excessive. His attempt at humor faded into seriousness. I spent 15 years building walls, Maeve. Now I want to build something else. Something with you, if you're willing. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Blackwood? She asked, her heart in her throat. That we tear up our contract. Start fresh. He took her hands again. That when you're ready, when Quinn is stable and you've had time to think, we consider a real marriage. Not for appearances or business, but because somewhere between I do and now, I fell in love with you. The words, so unexpected from this man who guarded his emotions like crown jewels, left Maeve speechless. She thought of their journey, from strangers at a courthouse to partners against corporate conspiracy to this moment. Snow falling outside, while her brother fought for his life in a hospital Thaddeus had built for him. I don't need time to think, she said finally. I've spent a year watching you, learning you, fighting with you, and falling for you despite my best intentions. Hope flickered in his eyes. Is that a yes? It's an I'll marry you again. For real this time. 1 year later, the gardens of the restored Blackwood family estate bloomed with spring flowers. Unlike their first wedding, this ceremony included friends, family, and genuine joy. Quinn, now in remission, stood as best man, his recovery a testament to the Blackwood Institute's groundbreaking work. When the officiant reached those familiar words, Thaddeus and Maeve exchanged glances full of private meaning. Do you, Thaddeus Alexander Blackwood, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. 2 words, filled with emotion that would have been unimaginable to the man who had spoken them a year earlier. And do you, Maeve Catherine Calloway, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Maeve smiled, remembering the courthouse, the contract, the journey. I do. This time, when the ceremony concluded, their kiss was neither perfunctory nor performed. It was a promise, sealed not on paper but in the hearts of 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely of arrangements, and discovered that sometimes the greatest business deal of all is allowing yourself to love again.